I'm so thrilled to introduce Hydra Mendoza, who is the Chief of Strategic Relationships in the Office of the CEO at Salesforce. Hydra, if it's okay, I'd love you to join me on the stage. That'd be amazing. And then I'm going to embarrass Hydra further by talking a little bit about her incredible experiences. Hydra, thank you so much. I am so proud to share. So I found it really difficult because Hydra, you've had a tremendous career journey. You've had so much impact, I think, on the communities that you served. So I found it really, really hard to narrow down into just a couple of bullet points. So I'm doing my best here, is what I'm saying. So bear with me. But I wanted to start here. As an overview, Hydra has had over 25 years of experience working as a community organizer, government and public affairs advisor, and education and equity leader. And by the way, you guys, if you guys have your event program in front of you, there's more detail in there about Hydra. I highly encourage that you take a look. I want to highlight a few key things, Hydra, if it's okay. Hydra served under 4 San Francisco mayors over 15 years. Is that correct? We're looking at Gavin Newsom, Mayor Ed Lee, London Breed, and Mark Farrell. Please. Hydra was the first and only Filipina elected to office in San Francisco, and multiple times, many, many times. In 2018, Hydra has a very, very long history with San Francisco. But in 2018, took a little bit of a detour, is that one, a big detour, was invited by Mayor Bill de Blasio to serve as the Deputy Chancellor for the Division of Community Empowerment, Partnerships, and Communications in the New York City Department of Education. And just to give folks a sense of scale here, the New York City Department of Education is the largest public school system in the country, serving 1.1 million children. Crazy. Yeah. Crazy. And now Hydra is with us today, sitting with us as the Vice President and Chief of Strategic Relationships in the Office of the Chair and CEO of Salesforce, Mark Benioff, where Hydra develops, builds, and maintains key stakeholder relationships. Among the many things that you've stewarded is you being a key architect, actually, behind a really a decade-long public education partnership with both SFUSD, San Francisco Unified School District, and Oakland Unified School District. And that is a $110 million investment from Salesforce over these 10 years. So officially, let's welcome Hydra. Thank you. You know, I've had the privilege of interviewing such tremendous people. And actually, I think it bears actually saying that Hydra, I had the pleasure of interviewing your wonderful husband, Eric McDonald. Eric, are you in the house? Erica, please say hi to everybody. Eric. Eric, you were so kind to me 4 years ago when I was leading this event for the very first time. And I had the pleasure of interviewing you as our Fireside chat speaker at the time. So thank you so much for being here tonight. And now tonight's all about Hydra, though, so we're going to put the focus there. I've had just the privilege of interviewing incredible people over the years, and I always wanted to start at a very baseline level because of who we are as an organization. That we are a mentorship nonprofit. We're focused on helping low-income students break the cycle of poverty, and the specific problem we're solving for is college undermatching. And the way we do it is by surrounding them with this tremendous ecosystem of volunteers who have their own resources, expertise, knowledge, and also just this tremendous passion and desire to give back in a long-term, sustained way. So, Hydra, I wanted to ask you, because you've had such a tremendous journey and always focused on service and impact. Can you tell us your personal view on the importance of building one's network and community, and how mentorship played a role in expanding your insights, your worldview, and your self-confidence?
First of all, thank you all for having me tonight. It's such a privilege to be here, and I'm so excited to see what you've built over the last few years, Irene, so congratulations on that. You know, when you were all talking about this kind of two-prong approach to what Minds Matters is about, and this idea that there's the mentorship and then there's the mentee, that's exactly what I feel like I've experienced over the last 15 years in the mayor's office in particular. You know, when I came into the mayor's office, oftentimes it's because you were a really great fundraiser for the person that was running, or you know, you're a family member of some sort, or you know, like you brought people together, and so that's how your administration oftentimes gets filled. And I was a little bit of an anomaly. You know, I had no relationship with Gavin. I call him Gavin. It's a little weird with the governor. And he didn't know me. I was running a nonprofit organization here in the city at the time. Invited him out to come and meet a group of parents whose kids were all in the public school system. You know, he had gone to public schools in Marin, but you know, he hadn't really had any interaction with the public school system in San Francisco, so he didn't have a relationship with really anyone that had been part of the system. So he came down, introduced him to this boatload of families, and this was during his time when he was running, and so he walks out and he was like, who were all those people? I've never met so many impassioned people who educated me about the public school system. Like, this is amazing. And then you fast forward, 6, 8 months, he wins, and he creates a position that focuses on the public education system. So I became his first education advisor in the mayor's office. And that's when I kind of knew, like, this is somebody who I need to learn from. And this was after feeling like he had just learned a lot from me. And that was a big flip, like I just didn't feel like that was something he was coming into to learn about, the organization that I was running. And so it was really amazing to have that person be able to kind of see something in you that you didn't see in yourself. And, like a few months into this, he started to talk about like wanting to be on the inside. We have to figure out how we get on the inside so that we can change the system on the inside. I was like, yeah, that's a great idea. And he's like, oh yeah, like we need somebody on the school board. That's what we need. We need somebody that can go in and just change things. It's like, oh yeah, I'm so with you. Like, I've got friends that are on the school board. I've got people that are interested in the school board. He's like, no. You're going to be on the school board. And that was like one of the largest pivots in my entire life. Because you're talking about running in a citywide race in the city of San Francisco, and you all that live here in the city know that politics here it's cutthroat. I mean, even at the school board level. And he started to tell people that I was running for school board. So this wasn't even like my idea, nor had I agreed to it. But we would go, like we'd be visiting schools, or we'd be at a KQED announcement or whatever, and he would start telling people, oh yeah, this is Hydra, she's my education advisor, she's running for school board, so you gotta support her. And it was like through osmosis, you start to believe that you're running for school board. And so he was one of my first mentors. Like, I really was fascinated by his way of convincing people that, you are more than what you think you are, and you're gonna go and do these really cool things. And then, you fast forward, once I was in his office, no one would go near our high school students. So we would have all these, internship programs, mentorship programs, and no one in our office would take a high school student because they were just too much. It wasn't, like they weren't prepared, they were too busy, we had too much confidential stuff, we didn't know what they were gonna do, and no one wanted to set all that up for them. So I took 7 interns into my office. And And they were the most amazing interns from all over the city. And they got to be, standing next to the mayor of San Francisco and see his inner workings. And many of my interns were from low-income communities. They were really struggling. They were raised by their grandmother. Their parents were incarcerated. There was a lot of different challenges, but their passion was there. Like, they took the initiative to apply to an internship in the city. And, I would have days where some of my kids would come in and they would just need to sleep. So we would let them, put their head down, close my door, and I would work away while they were asleep. And then there were others that were just like go-getters, and you just didn't have enough stuff for them to do. But I think through all of that was this learning of being mentored and then being a mentor. And being able to see that in one place, and sharing with them what I continue to learn and where those doors were opening up for them to learn. And I think that's what, this is all about. And I probably learned more from them, honestly, than they learned from me. And especially around, like, policy. We were doing a lot of public policy, and they were my go-to. I would go to them to just, say, hey, they want to change the school bell system. They want you guys to sleep in a little bit longer and have you come in a little bit later. What do you think about that? What do you think about the bus routes? What do you think about safety? What do you think about bullying? What do you think about, like, they were my go-to. And those were the advantages that they felt because they were at the table where we were making policy. I mean, they were the influence around Free City College. I went to them because they were the ones that, were not able to get into, a traditional college and wanted to start off at City College, but you still had to pay for it. My kids didn't have that money to pay for it. This is where Free Muni came from. So they were not only being mentored, but they were also at the center of creating policy that was coming out of City Hall.
Hydra, I'm a big fan of writing a script and then throwing away the script. Yeah. And one of the things I love about learning, I think, from folks like you, is that way leads on to way, and everything that you're saying helps inspire me to think about, like, what am I genuinely curious about? And so if it's okay, I'm going to go a little bit off script here.
I expected you to, actually.
Hydra, I think one of the things that really strikes me about you, we've had a couple of conversations over the years. I think the thing that strikes me about you, it's always about, like, impact over title. But I think that the thing that's really remarkable is that I think this will be something that people in the room can relate to, is sometimes we feel really pressured to represent ourselves, right? There's, like, how we sell what it is that we are doing, right? The package of our impact. But then there's, like, what actually is impact? What actually leads to change? What influences people? What helps people? And I think one of the things I've just found so remarkable about you, and I wonder if you can talk a little bit about, is, one, you've worked with many different communities over the years, and you can pick any single one, but I'm very, very curious about your depth of commitment to the San Francisco community. How you found that balance between listening, learning, being the representative conduit, right, that actually leads to change, and then thinking about how to represent that in a way that is exciting, gains investment, gets excitement from the people that frankly have the resources, right, to support the communities that you want to represent. If you can speak a little bit to that.
Yeah, sure. So, it was, when I was in the city, under both Mayor Newsom and Mayor Lee, and as an elected on the school board, I had this dual role that people challenged all the time. So, I had my city job, and so everybody was like, oh, well, you're just going to go do what the mayor wants you to do. He's your boss, so you're going to go do that. But But I was also an elected member, elected by the people of San Francisco, and I needed to do that job. But that didn't mean that the two jobs couldn't connect in some meaningful way, and that we couldn't leverage those two positions in order to get what was at the center, which were the kids. And I think this is where we get lost. It becomes an adult conversation and not a conversation about the impact it's going to have on our young people. And that's oftentimes where we would lose ourselves, right? Because it was always about, well, no, I'm right and you're wrong. But we forget what the conversation was about and what we're trying to solve for. I think the advantage that I had was, I spent my entire adult life here in San Francisco. I went to Washington High School. My husband's born and raised here. I had two kids that were born and raised here as well. Both went to Lowell High School. Brandon, I think actually our kids, you went to high school with my son. Did you graduate in 2016? Yeah. I was your commencement speaker, by the way, which was really crazy. And my son was incredibly embarrassed about it. I couldn't tell him that I was doing it. And so we're a San Francisco family. Like this is where we're going to make our commitments. But the other advantage I had of not only being what I consider myself a San Franciscan, is I worked in the nonprofit community. So I knew the struggles of the nonprofits that were trying to support the work that we were doing in the school district. We had over 1,000 nonprofits in our 100 schools. So you can imagine all of the different things that were happening, within our schools that we had no idea about. And then I worked in government for many years. The slowest as molasses process you'll ever experience. But it's important, right? So many people were dependent on how we got services out. And the connection between the money that we got from property taxes and income taxes and gross receipt taxes and all of the other things that we as homeowners have to pay for, and how that gets translated into services, is something that people were just not making that connection, right? It was the, I do pay taxes, so I want this, this, and this. But it wasn't the, we pay taxes so that our education system is better, so that our police department is better, so that there's, all of these different services. And so my combination of being, a San Franciscan working in nonprofit and then being in government was making those ties between, if we don't invest in our public school system, then the outcomes are going to be poor health care, more criminal justice issues, workforce development is not going to be what you want it to be. Families are not going to be able to buy homes. Like there's a full connection to all of those pieces that come out of how well we do as an education system. And you have to understand that before you can actually talk about how you connect the dots. And then when you go into communities, many of you know this, you go into communities and if you're not listening to what's happening in the community, but instead what you're talking about is what they should do, in your opinion, then you're going to lose the trust, the integrity, and quite frankly, just the welcoming of your voice. And so that was one of the biggest things that I kind of dug into. I felt like I was a PTA. I was on the PTA. I was on the school site council. I was a volunteer in my kids' classroom. I was a preschool teacher. I did all of these different things, so I had a perspective, but it's a different perspective in every single community that I went into. So whether it was a low-income community or it was an ethnic community, I didn't have every single part of who they were or the challenges they were experiencing or the fabric that they came from. So it was really about going in and then listening, and then this whole curiosity thing. My husband, Eric, will tell you, I am probably one of the most curious people that you'll ever meet, and nothing ever sits well with me. I'm always like, why? well, have we tried this? Is there a way to think about that? Well, who's at the table? Well, did you talk to so-and-so? Like, there's always this, like, and not a but. And I think that was part of it, too. So as people would talk about, the challenges that they were having at their various schools or within their communities, I felt like I had enough knowledge to be dangerous, but also enough relationships to go get what it is that they needed for their community. And that was, I think, another piece that, that your organization really speaks to. Like, this is not a transactional organization. This is a relational organization. You can't go in and go out. You can't, just be in part of someone's life for 3 months and then decide that you've had enough. Like, this is about relationships. This is about showing up. This is about making sure that what you say you're going to do, you do. This is about making commitments and about finding ways to solve the problems that people have. And it's very easy, especially, for those of us that are in privileged positions, to walk away and say, yeah, I'm tired of that. I want to go do something else now. But, you're that young kid you've been showing up for the last 6 weeks. That kid doesn't have that same option. And that's always how we had to come back. Like, okay, how is this child or this student going to be impacted by the behaviors of adults? And that's not a question that City Hall often asked. It's not a question that the school district often asked. And so that's where I think leadership had to show up. And they had to be committed to it. I mean, I think part of what made my work a lot easier, too, is that I didn't have my eye on the next elected office. So, I mean, I ran for school board 3 times. I was on the board for 12 years. The only reason that I got out of it is because I moved to New York. Like, that was the big aha. Like, this is how I have to get out because I need to go somewhere else. But I wasn't thinking about being a supervisor. I wasn't thinking about being an assembly member, being careful about what I said, being afraid of making commitments, being afraid of wanting to go find the solution that was going to come into the community. Those were very different words than if I were running for my next office, and I had to be a lot more careful about those commitments, especially if I couldn't come through on them. In my office, my favorite phrase is, I'll circle back. Because you have to close that circle. Like, I always say, I'll circle back. Even if it's like, hey, did you go do this? And I'll circle back. And I always want to close that loop. Even if I wasn't successful in getting them what they wanted, They knew that I was doing my best to try, and I was going to try to find what it is that they were looking for.
Hydra, thank you so much. I have one more question, but I was going to say, Benton, you've been holding out on us. You didn't tell us Hydra spoke at your graduation.
You don't even remember. I don't remember my commencement speaker, so I'm good.
I'm actually going to do this, Benton, because we're going to go into a Q&A in just a moment, but I actually have one more question for you, Hydra. But in the meantime, Benton, would you mind joining us on stage for the Q&A portion? And Hydra, in the meantime, I also have a question for you as Benton is making his way up here. Earlier I said tonight that there's this interesting thing that we do in the work of serving children is thinking about them as this category, right? And then 18 happens, the switch flips, and then you're an adult, and then what happens, and the system becomes, the way that I can describe it is uncurious about you. And so I'm always really fascinated. I know that this is painting it in a broad stroke, but I'm always really fascinated whenever we invite a guest up, actually to better understand you, right? To better understand you, because at some point the switch flipped, you were 17, you were 18, and then you're an adult, and you've had all these experiences. I'm just going to say again, you were the first and only Filipina elected to serve in San Francisco over the history of this city. You've had to be a first in so many different ways, sit in so many different spaces, so many different rooms, and I would imagine have to offer a voice that was unusual to hear, And there is a 17-year-old Hydra, and then there is a 29-year-old Hydra today with us tonight. And in that transition, 30-year-old Hydra with us tonight. And in that transition, you've had to, I would imagine, make sense of like, what do I have to offer, right? What have I gained? My resources, my knowledge, my capacity, my skill, but also like, who am I still making sense of in terms of my own identity? Because I didn't like leave being a kid, right, entirely behind me, and all of those experiences of being a first in so many different rooms, which must be terrifying. Like, can you tell us a little bit about that? Because you've sat in some incredible rooms, helped to make some incredible decisions, but often in a way where you are representing a voice that was not heard. How do you make sense of that?
I mean, it's probably even more challenging now being in the tech space, because this is not my space. Being in corporate America is, it's very different, and there is certainly these moments where you just kind of sit back and you just want to take it all in and not, seem aggressive or out of place, or, like they're not expecting you to give an opinion, because what opinion could you possibly have? And there are more rooms like that than the rooms where I'm welcomed. And I mean, even today, as much as I respect and love the work that we do at Salesforce, there are many times, where we come up on a screen and I'm the only woman and the only woman of color, and everybody else is male. And it's kind of funny. I've been actually kind of snapping pictures of those, just like for giggles, because it happens so frequently. And I think where, like, the turning point for me was to be part of these young people's lives, right? It was wanting to do a couple of things. First of all, I would take my students, my young people, to as many meetings as I possibly can, so that they can experience the kinds of dialogue that was happening about them that they had not been asked about. So that was a really important moment for me, was to start bringing our young people in and saying, I don't know, what do you think about it? And leaning over to them and having their voice be the voice that's being heard. But there's just so many times where if I don't say it, then who's going to say it? Because I did have a perspective that was very different than who was in the room. And so I just started saying stuff, and just kept saying stuff and just kept saying stuff. And the more I said, the more it resonated and the more people would ask. So now when I'm in a room, I'm oftentimes, can you kick this off, Hydra? Or, I don't know, what do you think? So it's a very different space to be in, but it's not always been that way. I have a young person right now who came from the Europe program and is now working as a contractor for me. She's a Fijian woman, and I tell her all the time, I'm like, look, just so you know, I'm going to be really hard on you. And I'm going to be really hard on you because I want you to experience this from someone who is giving it to you with love. Because then when you feel it from somebody who is not giving it to you from love, but mostly from disrespect, or because they don't think of you as somebody that has an opinion, then you'll be able to handle yourself. You'll be able to say, well, actually, or, well, I do have a thought about that, and not kind of cower into a corner. So, poor Nikki, I like, come at her all the time, and it's like, why did you make this decision? I'm not saying it was the wrong decision, but tell me why you made that decision. And she's like, why, it was a good decision. Why are you asking me about it? I said, because somebody else is going to ask you about it. And they're not going to hear you. I need you to hear you. I need you to have the time to think about how you're going to respond to this. because I'm not putting you on a timer. But I do want you to answer the question. So the next time you're asked that question, you'll be ready. And that's how I think, like, we have to be sometimes, Then there's been, early on, I can't tell you how many times I would beat myself up. I can't believe I didn't say that. I can't believe I didn't do that. Can't believe that they thought that this was this or that. And we're done with that. Like, our young people, the communities that I was serving, the communities whose voice was counting on me, couldn't have somebody who was just going to be going, okay, yeah, that works for us. And if I didn't flip that, then this was a entire group of people that I was disappointing. So this wasn't for me. And I had to remember that. This was not for me. But I have the privilege of being in that room. My kids gave me so much grief about going into government. Oh, you're going to go work for the man now. Oh, yeah, you're going to be part of that. It's like, yeah, and you know what? I'm going to go tell them everything that you've experienced and all the things that happen in our community and the things that, we're not seeing, that it's going somewhere else, because nobody is in that room to tell them that. So how many rooms do we have to be in? And that has been probably the biggest reward, is being able to be in a room that made me very uncomfortable for a very long time, and now feeling like I can have a command of the room. And again, not in a negative or arrogant way, but yeah, I'm going to tell you some stuff that you probably haven't heard before, and you're going to appreciate it.
Thank you, Hydra.